Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks Show, a series designed to give you insight into the world of self-publishing and marketing your books. I'm Ben Pick, and I'm joined by my co-hosts.
I'm Morgan Lee.
And I'm Shannon, writing under the pen name SC Huston.
We're here today with author and Marine veteran Rod Van Blake. We're going to ask him questions about his self-publishing journey and how he markets his work. But before we jump into that interview, how are all of you doing?
Pretty good. By the time this podcast comes out, it will be the end of my Seed Among the Thorns read along from my first book. And then I'm planning the cover reveal / book trailer release on the 17th of October. So that's coming up soon. So you should look out for that.
Yeah, I can't wait to see the trailer. Who did you get it done through?
I'm doing it myself.
Oh, okay. Yes. I can't wait to see it because I know you also designed some of your covers in the past too. So I've seen some of your work there. So this is coming out October 15th, which I'm still going to be writing. I don't know anything big. I'm looking for special guest speakers for the next AuthorTube writing conference. We've sent some invitations out and we've got one reply back, and that was Michael Laron from Author Level Up on YouTube. So I was really, really excited that we got him. But he's the only one so far that's responded. I'm hoping by October 15th, we will have all of our special guest speakers and keynote speaker in place. And then 1 December, the application's open for guest speakers and speakers. So I'll probably be working on that for the next few months besides my writing as well.
That's great. As for me, I'll be going through another round of editing with my second book and looking to get it out there before the end of the year. Now let's talk about our guest author today. Rod Van Blake is an actor, author, voice actor, Marine veteran, creator of the Ancient Illumination sci-fi series, Naum Bani Chronicles fantasy series, owner-operator of Mahali Penguin Entertainment LLC. He also hosts the Ascari Cast podcast along with Jordan Purnell Jackson and fellow author Andrea Rose Washington on Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. His author website is ancientillumination.net, where you can find his books, graphic novels, comics, and scheduled appearances. Welcome, Rod. Would you please take a moment to tell us a little more about yourself and cover anything we missed?
Hi, hope everyone's doing well today. As Ben mentioned, I'm a Marine veteran, born in Rochester, New York, raised in Chicago, lived pretty much a bunch of places. Started my love for writing basically after reading a plethora of science fiction and fantasy novels and being curious. After ingesting so much, I wondered if I could write one of these. So that's kind of how my journey started. And then I wrote within one of the IPs that I love and hold dear to my heart and wrote a short story with that, and then realized quickly that I can never own this. Someone's already done this, and if anything ever becomes of it, it would be either taken from me or I'd be sued. So I decided, why not just start something of your own? And it basically started out with a what if scenario of what if there were sentient beings made of your life? And then it kind of progressed from there, me getting some context of what if that initial first contact meeting took place 68,000 years in the past when we were still Cro-Magnon, and then I developed a story from there, and I've been writing ever since.
That's wonderful. And your passions and interests and influences definitely come through in your writing. Before we jump into questions of self-publishing and marketing your books, could you tell us what made you want to start writing, aside from writing based on your interests and the IP that you referenced?
Mainly because the initial curiosity that I was enjoying something so much, reading all of these fantastical worlds, these adventures of people running into aliens, time travel, all the variables that come along with science fiction and fantasy, the awesome action that I saw in some of the writers, R.A. Salvatore with the Dark Elf trilogy. I just wanted to emulate some of those things, and I was kind of curious to see if I could execute that to any level. So like I said, it started with that short story, and once I got that short story out and finished, it kind of boosted my confidence. I let some of my friends read it, of course, which is always a risky situation because your friends and loved ones are always going to tell you what your work is like. So it's hard to gauge whether it's actually good or not. But that was initially what started me writing, was just reading so much and wondering if I could emulate what I was enjoying. And then if I could have fun creating characters and places that I enjoyed, then perhaps I could find other people that it kind of registered with and they would enjoy them too.
Nice. So you talked a little bit about your journey into self-publishing that first book, but could you tell us a little bit more about the podcast that you host? What topics do you all cover on that?
The Ascari Cast, like Ben said, Jordan Purnell Jackson, who's actually the graphic artist and illustrator for both my graphic novels. He has his own comic series. And Andrea Rose Washington, who wrote Elendil, Amentry's Magic, and Adolithia, fantasy and sci-fi books. We met at various conventions, and I wanted to get a podcast out during the lockdown. Like I said, I wrote books during the lockdown. We started a podcast during the lockdown, and it was kind of another way for us to reach out to other people of like mind that enjoyed the same things we enjoyed. I didn't want to be salesy, was my main thing. I didn't want to be like, hey, here's my book. Hey, here's my book. So what we do, it's basically a format that we watch a show or a movie, and then we get together on the podcast and we discuss the plot points, the characters, what we like, what we didn't like, and then sometimes we'll rate it, and sometimes at the end of the shows, I'll turn it over to them and say, okay, here's what I think. But if you were given the helm as the writer and creator of this show or movie, how would you have changed it and why, basically? So I basically wanted to put together a form where we can kind of grow an audience, we could reach out to people without being salesy, and really just discuss things that we were enjoying and watching that were in the same genres of things that we did.
So I really like that idea. When we created this podcast, it was around the idea that, I know for me and Morgan at that time, we were self-publishing. Ben jumped in and started self-publishing a little over a month ago, but we were interested in what are people doing that is successful. But our podcast is going to reach writers. It sounds like your podcast reaches more readers.
Yes.
So-
My initial podcast, when I started, it was just me by myself. So I did my very first episode, I think was sometime either 2019 or 2020, where I did talk specifically about self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And then my second podcast, because it was just me, and they were really, the first few are really short, it's just me. And I think my second title, it's called Your Idea Sucks to Somebody, but That's Okay. And basically under the premise that there's so much ridiculousness out there, no matter how far-fetched your idea is, I encourage people to go ahead and write that book, write that screenplay, whatever it is you want to do. If Sharknado can get 4 films, then whatever it is you have out there on your mind can definitely get made. And don't let people, the naysayers, try and discourage you because they think your idea is too crazy. Because I think it's proven that as crazy as things get, it's still possible to get it made and get it to be a successful product.
Good advice. So far you've self-published all your novels, and you're working on your graphic novels now too. Have you ever thought about traditionally publishing?
I did, but I always felt like, number one, I needed an agent. I needed somebody else. I liked self-publishing because it's all self-propelled. No one can stop me but me. I can write what genre I want. I can take as long or write as fast as I want to. And advances, kind of the idea of advances scared me, and the fact that somebody, hey, we gave you $100,000 up front and you don't get anything else until basically the residuals made off sales now have made up that money, and you go over that amount, and now your residuals we start coming in. Whereas I can make my residuals now as soon as the book starts selling, I start making residuals. And the kind of gatekeeping process with traditional publishing, we don't feel that what you're writing is going to sell and therefore not worthy of us putting any promotion dollars into it. The fact that I would still have to promote the book whether I was traditionally published, unless you're a name. Like if you're a Stephen King or George R.R. Martin, you just whisper that very softly and sales are just going to come trailing in. But as an unknown person, you're going to have to go out and kind of proverbially pound the flesh and go out there and tell people about your books. So I figured if I'm going to do the lion's share of the marketing anyway, then why am I going to rely on a company and their schedule to promote my books and say, you're on the calendar with a Stephen King or a George R.R. Martin, and I wanted to release my book in October for Halloween. And they go, well, Stephen King's releasing his book in October for Halloween, and he's a more known author, and so I'm sorry, we're going to have to push your project back. So I didn't want to deal with any of that stuff. So I was like, I think this is pretty cool that now we can, I always say about self-publishing, the greatest thing about self-publishing is that everyone can do it. The worst thing about self-publishing is the fact that anyone can do it, because there's no vetting process, there's no insurance that anybody has to use an editor. So I think that gives some self-publishing authors a bad rap when they do come into contact with people you know editor. You don't have to. At 24 to 48 hours, you can have your manuscripts out into the world on Amazon like that. So I did think about it, but number one, I was never approached. So if it was a conversation that was never had, then that was an opportunity I didn't have. So I went about it the way that was easiest access for me.
That makes sense. Besides your novels, you also have graphic novels based on the novels. How did you come to the decision to have those graphic novels done? And you mentioned that you met your artist at the conference. So what went into the decision to use multiple platforms?
I published Ancient Illumination, the first novel in that series, in 2016 through basically a vanity press, which doesn't exist anymore, called Bookule. So basically you paid a la carte for your editing services they found, and a cover artist and all that, and then you have your book. So I went in 2017 to Baltimore Comic-Con, which is my first convention as a vendor, and sold almost 80 books, made almost $600-700, and I was really happy. For my first time out, I only had at the time one book. That was it. I didn't have anything else. And I had been advertising in Locus and Asimov and Analog magazines. And so for the amount of money I was spending, it wasn't worth it. But people, because I had my banner, actually the banner behind me is my first, it's really dark and bad now that I look compared to the ones that I have at now. But people would see the artwork because I had got some foam board cutouts of some of my characters done. And so I had those displays up on my table, and people would come up to the table and say, oh, this character looks really cool. Since I was at a Comic-Con, they would say, where's the comic? And I'm like, there is no comic. I'm a literary author. I cannot draw stick figures. I'm sorry. This is what it is. I have this art so that people can, like you just did, come ask about character. It gives me an opportunity to talk to you. And then I can go into into my synopsis and all that. But then people would like tell me, story sounds really cool. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to read 300 pages. Can you draw it? And I listened to that a couple times and kind of ignored it. My wife and I were just hearing it. And then it kept happening over and over and over and over again. So I was like, you know what? There seems to be a market for the illustrated version of my book because you keep asking for it. If there's a market for it, then it might behoove me to make that happen. The problem was finding an artist. And funnily enough, I think it was 2019, 2 years down the line after we've been doing, each year we've been adding more and more conventions to the schedule. We go to a small convention in Howard County, Maryland on a fairgrounds. And I didn't know how this was going to go. The dude walked up to me. He's, hey, what you doing? And I was like, I'm selling books at the comic convention. Oh, I'm with the 4-H club. I'm judging horses. I was like, oh, all right. So I was like, well, I don't know how this is going to go. So we go into this warehouse there on this fairground. It's a really small convention. My wife's walking around and she finds a young guy with some interesting art. He had a Koye from Black Panther, but there's a red background and she had the Infinity Stones as jewels on a bracelet with a big one. It was really cool drawing, a digital drawing he had done. He had made art prints out of it. And then he had some other things that I liked, some anime-inspired drawings of John Stewart, Green Lantern, holding a sword, but he was in like a Japanese garb in the sword. He even had the Wabaki sandals on his feet. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I like the style. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I like his art. So I told him about my books and I said, you know what? I never buy anything before I make tables. So I'm going to go back to my table. I'm going to sell books. And when I get back, I picked out like 3 or 4 pieces of art. And he liked the story. He came over right away, grabbed the first book and said he liked it. So then the next week, I think we met up over pizza and a beer at some place and discussed some basically that, hey, I kind of like your art. You kind of like my story. We're going to then illustrate my novels out into graphic novels. And so once we decided on price, did a handshake, drew a contract, we've been working together ever since. And it's kind of a different telling. It is the same story that's illustrated out, but he was having difficulties because I didn't have a script for him to go off of. So he basically read the novels, broke them down, and he's like, hey, you've written this cinematically. And because we're limiting the amount of pages that I have, where you have 290 something, almost 300 pages, we're doing 56 pages of illustration. I have to tie the story together so we stay with one group of characters for a longer amount of time in the graphic novels versus the novels, like movies, like, hey, we're in LA, flash forward 4 days, we're in New York. And that may be 4 pages, but because of the amount of pages we have that are limited, we can't just go back and forth to different group. The continuity of the story kind of is going that way. So that's kind of how we came to getting them illustrated. We'll be doing the 3rd volume sometime next year of the graphic novel. Right now, we're working on doing the same thing with my fantasy series, the Umbani Chronicles.
That's so interesting. I wanted to ask an additional question. Now that you've had this process with your illustrator, do you go ahead and write another like script for him to follow? Like, do you redo the story, or does he just pick out what's what? Yeah.
Yeah, he basically went through and stitches the story together from my novels.
Okay.
The difference now with the fantasy side with Yambani, when I wrote that, I had it in mind now that I'm going to eventually get this illustrated. So now what I do for the entire chapter, I stick with the same characters instead of the flightiness of the sci-fi series where it can be all over the place. So for each chapter, that way, for format wise, I can just give him these 2 chapters will be the comic or graphic novel, and you can just illustrate it straight from that as a script and not having to leaf through the entire book to stitch through. But I think the first volume covers chapters like 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 in the second volume. But it's not really because, like I said, he's got to stitch the story together, so we stick with this group of characters for a longer period of time. So we're not missing anything. It's just that the cuts are kind of different.
Okay. So you also have direct sales on your graphic novels using Swipe Simple. Can you tell us how you began the process for that and why you chose that platform over things like PayPal or Shopify?
Mainly, I was a part of a multi-level marketing business that offered merchant services is how I came to them. And I already had the account and I was able to get a reasonable card reader separate from my phone because I was tired of using the ones that plug into the headphone jack. I have actual small tablet. It's not like the rates or anything or any different from those other choices. It's just for me, I already had access to the card reader and I already had it hooked up to my bank account and everything. It was less administrative stuff that I would have needed to do to set up the other accounts. And I like the fact that I get an annual statement for tax purposes. So if I forget how much exactly I've made, when the IRS and the state comptrollers I'm calling, I can have a printout and send them, this is exactly what I've done in credit card sales, and here's, my 6% sales tax or whatever it is they're looking for. So there's less kind of homework that I had to do with them. I'm sure the other services are fine. It was already installed with me before I started selling books. So that was the reason why I chose them.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Thought of another question I want to throw in there. So I know some people don't want to talk about money, but maybe ballpark figure, how much do you spend on your graphic novels to get them done?
First one I think was around 8,400 for a 56-page full color illustrated graphic novel. The second one I believe was around 8,700. Same, but because the work that we realized he was doing an extra without a script, having the formatting and everything, so I think I threw a few $100s more on top of that just to compensate him for that. And that's also the reason why I'm breaking down the comic to make it slightly less expensive. We got a 32-page comic, which should be around $4,500 or so. I'm gonna have to pay a little more to get a letterer on top of that.
And sorry, just to clarify, how many pages equates to your one novel? Because you said you charged you did 56 pages for the graphic novel, but how much of that is, say, Ancient Illuminations or your fantasy series? Like how many of those novels does it take to equal one book?
It's the first book should actually end up being 15 volumes because we split. There's basically 2 chapters per graphic novel, and there are 30 chapters. So we're hoping to get at least 30 volumes out of book 1, and then there are 2 more books in that series currently. And I'm working on the second one in the fantasy, and the first comic for that one is basically going to be the first chapter. Like the prologue chapter of the book is going to be the first comic, and that one has 28. So hopefully 28 comics will come out of the fantasy book.
Okay, and that's the price I feel is steep for someone who's just entering self-publishing, hasn't made any money yet. So
I'm technically still in the hole, but I know that the potential is there, and I'm selling it digitally, but that's the whole reason why I'm not offering the physical copies on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Because they were so expensive, I'm negating that 70% split for the physical copy. You have to come directly. You can either go on my website or you can see me at one of these events. And basically what I'm going to do is I'll come back and revisit that once I've made that 87 and 8,400 back from those 2 volumes to whether I actually just say, okay, I've made my money back and I can put them on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. We'll see.
I think that's a different approach, but smart for trying to get those direct sales.
Yeah.
What is one misconception you had about self-publishing before you published your work?
I don't think I had any misconceptions about it. Because when I first started writing, it was still, I think we were on the precipice of it becoming more sort of mainstream. And when it wasn't really an option before then, I don't think I had any preconceived notions about self-publishing because I wasn't in the industry. I don't know. I mean, that may have been different had I been like an editor or an agent. And then I think people within the industry on the other side are probably more prone to turning their noses up at self-published authors and people looking to self-publish. I think more I'm seeing a lot of people questioning whether they should or not. Now it's a question of what avenue should I take? Should I try and be traditionally published or should I just take the reins myself and go self-published? I think it's more of figuring out and discerning what you can actually do. I think thinking about the predicament of having to do so much yourself is what scares most people away. And I'm of the mind of do what you can do and pay people for what you can't do. Like you can't confident, like with the drawing, I knew I could not draw. So it doesn't make any sense for me to go ahead and try, you know what, I'm going to draw my own comic books myself. Like, no, there's some prodigies out there that may be able to self-teach themselves to draw great, but I'm not one of them. And just recognizing that and realizing we're going to have to pay somebody for that service, then go ahead and do that. And the fact that, like I said, you're still going to have to do a lot of work yourself, despite the fact that they're traditionally published nowadays. And I think things have changed with regard to even approaching that, where companies want you to have, because of the way social media and the internet is set up now, is different from back in the day, where they want you to have a certain amount of following. Like, hey, you need to have over 5,000 something followers across these platforms, and we want you to have a huge imprint. And my thing would be, if I had that following before, then why would I need you to promote my books? I would just simply put it out there, and it would be there. That's what I'm coming to the traditional publishers for, because you have a bigger footprint online and across print media and advertising. That's what I'm here for. If I could have done all this stuff myself, then I would just push it out myself.
If you could only pass on one tip to aspiring self-published authors, what is your best tip or trick for publishing?
Get it done. I think the hardest thing is getting that first book done. It took me years. I think I began writing Ancient Illumination somewhere in 2004, and then just let life get away. And things kept delaying and being interference and just hindering my efforts to finish the book. And when I finally buckled down to finish the book, it was a huge sigh of relief. But if I had a dime for everybody that tells me they were about to or almost wrote a book, I'd be a very rich person. And I think 99.9% of us all have ideas that can be written down and executed in book format and put out the world. I think maybe 2% of us actually act on that. So my thing is, get the book done. Don't be about to do something. Just go ahead and do it, get it done, and put your work out there. And the other tip, like I said, would be discerning what you can and can't do. Know your weaknesses, know your strengths. Some people are really good at editing their own book. I am not an advocate of that, mainly because I think there needs to be another set of eyes aside from yours on that work to see the mistake. Because sometimes we can see what's supposed to be there rather than what's actually there. And so we miss just a lot of easy mistakes. So yeah, pay for things that you need to pay for. Pay for editor. Your editor and your book cover are the two things I think are most important when self-publishing, because they say don't judge a book by cover, but let's be honest. When you're scrolling through Amazon or Barnes & Noble, or you're scrolling through your Kobo or whatever, however you get your books, most of us stop when we see a really cool cover. And so you don't know that the book is good until after that initial grasp of attention that's drawn by the cover. And then once you get in there, if there's a whole bunch of mistakes, especially for an avid reader, I think it's going to be a distraction. It's going to turn them off. So those are things I would not straight on as a self-published author.
All right, so now we're going to transition from publishing to marketing. So what marketing do you do for your books, and does it look different for a new release versus your backlist?
Well, I'm kind of lazy, to be honest. Initially, I was in, like I said, Analog, Asimov, and Locus magazines, maybe because I have a marketing degree. And so I was doing my little market research and thought I was being smart and pithy, and saw that Locus magazine has 70,000 readers worldwide, average age from 12 to 60. And on average, their readers purchase about $1,000 worth of books annually. So I figured quarter page and half page ad in this magazine, it's within my genre, within my wheelhouse. I should make this back. Now, it was about $250 a month for Analog and Asimov magazines, and their readership is around the same. The difference with that and Locus demanded that you had to buy 3 months in advance. So I couldn't just buy 1 month. I had to buy 3 months. So 300 times 3, that was $900. So for 3 months, I was in Locus magazine, and 3 months I was also in Asimov magazine. I would see a trickle of sales, but there was no correlation, meaning the amount of money that was coming in wasn't equaling the amount I was putting out for these to be in these monthly magazines. So it's like, man, this isn't worth it. So like I said, when we got here to Baltimore and I saw the table was $250 for 3 days, and I went to the table for 3 days and made almost $700. I was like, hey, this is a much better way to get the word out there and to sell books. I was also able to collect emails while at these conventions, so I get an email list going. And once I have my email list going, I may save that for either a new release or like what I'm doing in this November. We should be done with the comic book in October, so hopefully we'll have that for Baltimore Comic Con in October. But then we're going to do a Kickstarter in November. So as far as marketing, I use the events because I can gauge how much foot traffic is going to be at each event that I go to, and depending on how that is, it'll be a better investment to pay $300, $200, $100, depending on the table. That's basically, in my eyes, that's my marketing money. I'm spending money to have my books on display at this event where I know 25 to 50,000 people in foot traffic are going to be, and if I get 1% of those people to purchase my book, I should be in pretty good shape. I have used Facebook ads, Twitter ads occasionally, but they have had varying efficacy for me. I am more of a fan of boots on the ground marketing to people, because then they come talk to me. They can see how excited I get about the stories that I'm telling. They can ask questions. It's different than seeing an ad that it's just a one-way conversation. They either get it or they don't. They either like the visuals they see or they don't. And there's really no feedback I can get or give in that online interaction. All I see is an imprint, a click, that someone clicked on the ad, they stayed for however many seconds, and it either did or didn't lead to a sale. But I find it much more effective to be at the events. That's my main thing. And I announce, you're asking what the difference is between my backlog and a new release. So I have a new release coming next month, and I've already been telling people at the event. So now I think we'll have done 14 events this year. So at each event, I've been telling people about my book coming out. I mean, when they ask me, hey, how many books are going to be in this series? Is this just a standalone novel, or are you actually, I'm more than halfway done with the second novel right now. It'll be out in October. And I have a pre-order QR code for you to click on if you want to buy the comic that's coming out in October. And then what I do is I'll take like an 11x17. I have a print of a dragon. These guys called the Pontu Tribesmen, which ride dire panthers, and Guardian Falls with this beautiful waterfall with the large statues of the Orishas over this waterfall. And I give away one of those reprints to everybody that pre-orders the comic, so that they leave the table with something in hand. They don't just leave empty-handed. And the QR code makes them fill everything out online. So when they pay, I get an address, and I don't have to decipher anyone's handwriting because they type it in. So then when the comic is ready, I am ready to go. I take that list of addresses, I print off my comics. I'll be mailing those out to everybody that pre-ordered comics. So most of my marketing now is in person. I will engage in the online stuff every now and then, and I have since about 2018 or so cut back on the print advertising in the magazine. But that's basically my marketing strategy.
Well, I like how you got a little bit of that military lingo in there, boots on ground.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm a veteran myself of the Army, and I worked as a civilian for the Marine Corps, so a little bit versed in it. I liked you mentioned doing Kickstarter for upcoming novel.
No, the comic.
For the comic, you're doing Kickstarter.
I don't. The thing is, the books will be available on the Kickstarter because you have to set
private
up
tiers. Yeah.
So I use the rest of my backlog to kind of boost the content available, because I believe when you paid more money, you could get more products. So in order for me to I sack in the book. We did that for Ancient Illumination. I had the first one completed and the graphic novel, and I told you guys how much I spent on it, but I really didn't want to pay that again for the second one. So I said, you know what? Let's do a Kickstarter since. And the other thing is, things were shut down so bad. I just published the third book in Ancient Illumination in 2020. We had finished completion on Ancient Illumination Volume 1 graphic novel. And because everything was shut down, I basically had nobody to sell these to. So, what do we do? I'm like, how about I do a Kickstarter to basically raise the money for the production of the second graphic novel. And at the same time, since I haven't been at conventions all year, I can make up for all those missing conventions pretty much by offering the books as part of the tier. So you could either just support for just a graphic novel you want. You could get the graphic novel and pre-order the second graphic novel in a bundle deal. And I had various bundle deals for the hardcovers or paperbacks of all three Ancient Illumination novels, and then you could bundle the graphic novel into it. I also had a military challenge coin created for the Galactic Marine Corps in my novels that train on Saturn. So I had this challenge coin as a special tier reward, so you could get the graphic novel plus this coin, of which I only printed up like 100 of them, so they were a limited edition collectible. I don't like doing them every few months. I want them to be biannual as a marketing tool.
Yeah, I just was in a class that Monica Leonel gave. And, she and Russell Nolte, they just came out with a book earlier this year, Get Your Book Selling on Kickstarter.
Mhm.
And she had said, maybe 2 a year, but it's better if it's like once a year to do a Kickstarter.
Yeah. My strategy for it is I want to have built up enough content throughout the year or 2 years so that I can really stretch those tiers out and pack them with content the next time you hear from them. If I'm every few months,
You're
I'm
not
like,
gonna have
hey,
new
here's
stuff.
issue 1, here's issue 2, here's issue 3, here's the catch up. If you missed those first 3, here's issues 1 through 4. I'd rather wait, and then each year is going to be a different thing for me. So this year we've been mainly working on the fantasy side of things because it was short compared to my science fiction series. So next year we'll be flipping it back to the sci-fi side for Ancient Illumination. In the meantime, after I've written the 4th book in that series, and we probably get the 3rd volume of graphic novel for AI, I will then go back, or like not 2023, but maybe 2024. Then we go back into the fantasy side, and I may have written another book in that series and got another comic done. So that when I do a Kickstarter for that, it'll be 2020, and then 2022 we have another Kickstarter. But I don't feel like I've nagged everybody for the entire time.
Yeah.
So by the time I come back, not only do I have kind of a frenzy of content that's now available that wasn't available to you previously, and it's all new, and you can catch up with everything in case you've missed, or it's like, man, I just gave you money last month, dude. I can't buy everything every month. And especially with the way things have been going financially for the world, the economy. So I try and stagger it so that by the time I come back around to you, that it's a good chance that you'll support and keep what I have going, especially if you enjoy it. I think that's basically how I frame it as you're helping me continue to expand these worlds that you've expressed to me that you enjoy, and since you enjoy that, I'm happy to give them opportunity to help me grow this.
Well, you're also a member of the Alliance Independent Authors, which helps promote your books, although they don't guarantee the sales. And so we were just wondering, do you feel the site has helped you make those sales?
Vaguely. I joined that initially because I wanted there was a contest, and I was like the runner-up to the book of the year I entered the contest. And that was the whole reason. I didn't know anything about them, thought it would be a cool group to be a part of because I'm an independent author, and these are a bunch of other independent authors. And so I joined the contest, and it got down to the wire, and I ended up being runner-up, and I got a cool seal for that I could advertise. So in that respect, it was a helpful thing to put on marketing stuff for my book. When they see that, some people pay more attention to it. I don't know how much it's helped or not. And like I said, most of my sales come from in person. I get a trickle of online sales, and the funny thing is I get more of a boost in sales when I'm at events than when not. I do notice some extra visits to my Amazon author site and to my personal author website after events, and also Amazon plays with your prices sometimes. I don't know if people know that they can do that, but when you're on their platform, they can play with your prices. So I did notice sometimes that my hardcovers would go down in price on Amazon, usually after there's been a ton of traffic and I've been handing out business cards at an event at home after a weekend, and on Monday, like it's supposed to be $25.99 for a hardcover, and you see it down to like $10 or something. And even I've seen it as low as $7. So usually, here's another tip: when you see that and you have Amazon Prime, hit the buy button until that price goes back up $25.99. Because what they'll do is they'll limit the number of copies you get. And since Ingram Spark is my printer, it's the exact same printed product that I would have gotten if I bought it wholesale. But I think my wholesale price was like $9. So when I saw it at one time $7, and I don't have to pay shipping because I'm a Prime member, I was smashing that buy button until in system you'll get like a red. It's like you have basically bought more than what is allotted. So then it goes back to $25.99. And then I undercut myself on that price when I'm in person. Because in person I only sell them $20.
What was the best money you spent marketing your books?
The best money? Table fee. I had been trying to get into this one event in Crystal City, Virginia for like 4 years and couldn't get in. And then one day they opened up applications for you to speak on a panel. And I created a panel called When Writer Meets Artist. And I asked my artist, I said, Jordan, could you come with me and let's talk about the ins and outs of having two creators of different skills come together and create something. And basically my talk was about the obstacles to finding an artist, the potential obstacles between that writer-artist relationship, the give and take, the clash of egos, the fact that it's your baby and now you're giving it in the hands of someone else to have an interpretation of it. That's how we got in. And then they gave us lanyards and face masks that I think acted as our ticket into the event and these wristbands. And I went down on the floor of the event and I saw empty tables. And I was like, what's up with this empty table? There's no way there should be empty tables. I've been trying to get in here for years and couldn't get in. And I kept bugging the lady who was in charge of the tables. I just kept giving her the stink eye every time I walked by. And eventually she's like, look, we don't hear back from the people that are supposed to have those tables by 5 o'clock. I'll let you get one. They let me get a table. I wasn't even there for all 3 days. So technically I got in on Friday at 6 o'clock when it closed at 7. I made table before we even left there. And then I called my wife and said, we're bringing everything for Saturday and Sunday. And in 2 days, we basically did like over $3,000 at this one convention I've been trying to get into. So if I could emulate that at every event that I've gone to, that was probably the best money spent, was basically the gas to get there, because I didn't have to pay anything to get to the panel. They just accepted my panel subject and my outline of it and our pictures, and that was the best money I've spent wise. The return on investment on that one was real.
Do you have any recommended cons then?
It depends on where you are regionally. For me, because I'm in Baltimore, most of the conventions I go to are on, and here in Maryland, Virginia, basically the DMV area. Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia is really where I go. I've also gone to a couple events in Philadelphia. That's all part of it too. It's basically a cost analysis of how much money you're going to have to send to get there, how much inventory you're going to have to bring. I would love to go to San Diego Comic-Con in California, but it's really expensive. The logistics is going to be a headache of getting out there. How many books would I have to bring to mitigate the cost of a $1,200 to $1,800 table over 45 days, plus airfare, plus shipping, and whatever you don't sell them, I'm going to have to ship it back here. So I would love to go, but I keep telling people, like, when are you going to do San Diego? And I was like, hopefully when I've got some streaming deal and they're interviewing me on a panel where I don't have to sell books, but I'm just telling, they're asking questions like, how do you feel about Lawrence Fishburne playing a particular character in your book? And I'll be like, hey, I like that. Oh, that's great. If you're in the area, Awesome Con. If you're in the DMV area, Awesome Con in DC, Baltimore Comic Con. We did really well at Virginia Beach, Tidewater Comic Con. And sometimes it's those smaller events that can be really good. We made good money last month at Fairfax, and it was only one day. We love these one-day events because, especially sometimes if you're in those smaller communities, the people in those communities are starved for events of any kind, and you go in there and everybody's just happy to see some new stuff, and they're really supportive. They buy your stuff, and you're out of there. Some of the longer events can be time-consuming and work. When you think about being on your feet from anywhere from 8 to 16 hours a day for an event like WorldCon, which was 5 days, I believe. Balticon was 4 days, and when you're used to events that are only 2 and 3 days, those extra 3 days, boy, feet get to hurting. But yeah, those are the big ones are good because of the potential for a higher volume of foot traffic. But you may actually get more bang for your buck if you find out that there are small events in your area, wherever you live in the country or in the world, that do well with marketing their events to ensure that you'll have a decent turnout. So it just takes some research, researching where you are, what's available to you in your area, and what you can afford of it. You don't want to overextend yourself. You don't want to buy too much inventory for an event, but at the same time, we're talking books that are not perishable. So, as long as you're taking care and they're up off the ground in a reasonably dry place and aren't going to be ruined as you store them, and you just, buy as much inventory as you can, and then you sell them as you do. And when you get the opportunity to sell, you go ahead and do that.
So if you could only pass on one thing to aspiring self-published writers, what would be your best marketing tip or trick?
Sell at events. That's me personally. And I know, Shannon, we spoke briefly earlier. You're saying that you were an introvert. I would go to events and I would spend money on, I don't know if you guys seen on my website, the gallery on my website where it has my display behind me. Even if you don't want to talk to people or you're not comfortable talking to people, art will draw eyes. And when eyes are drawn to your stuff, then that gives you an opportunity to speak to them and open a conversation. And if you're not comfortable starting or initiating that conversation, a lot of times they'll initiate it for you. I would sell at events, unless you're just some online whiz. And if you're an online whiz, and like I said, you have that je ne sais quoi with social media and you're just a Pied Piper online. For me, it's the online in-person events, that in-person interaction, the questions that they can ask you, the things that appeal to them that may not have become obvious to you, because there are obviously other people who have different perspectives, different personalities, different things will speak to us. And you're only going to get that type of feedback once somebody walks up to you, sees your display, looks through the art, looks at the books, asks you some of the same questions you guys have asked me. What made you write this? Why this and why in this genre? For me, in-person events is the best marketing. And I understand that scheduling wise, it may be hard for some people who have 9-to-5 jobs, schedules, family, but then you can pick and choose. You don't have to go to every single one. For me, it started with just one, just get your feet wet. I'm going to go for this weekend to this event and I'm going to sell my books. And I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I had never been to a Comic-Con before to sell. And that was the thing that stuck out to me, is I saw all these visual things, and that kind of scared me at first. I'm not offering anything visually. You open up the book, it's just words. So you have to do the visuals in your head, the words to provide a guideline for that. But I don't have any comics, I don't have any posters, I don't have any of that stuff. And a lot of people that were at the convention were there strictly for visual reasons, and that's why I think it's important for them to invest in banners, displays, things that are going to draw the eyes of potential readers as they walk by your table, because it's what's going to get the conversation started.
I like to shift from marketing to more of your writing life. How much of your daily regimen do you spend actually writing versus doing all the other tasks associated with it? And you keep talking about going to conventions. You were just talking about finding the balance between writing and family life and going to cons. So how much time do you spend writing, and where do you find that balance?
I have to ride the lightning sometimes. It depends on when I can find the inspiration. And once I get a hold of it, I'm not eager to relinquish it, because there can be droughts. So right now, my day, I get up around 7. I have some stuff I do for a few hours, and I come down here to my office, and I basically lock myself in here, and I try to write. I'm trying to get a chapter done at least each day, and it hasn't been successful every day. And when I'm not able to get a chapter done, then I go back to my outline, and I spend with my outline, and I brainstorm different characters, races, situations, and sometimes I come up with really cool scenes. And then maybe, I got a OneNote up on my screen, and I'll pop that scene. I don't know quite where it's going to go, but I think this would be a really good scene. Let's type that up, and it's just a vague 1 or 2 sentences of what's going to happen in that scene. And then once I figure out what's going on, usually that jogs me into writing at some point. So either if I'm here in my office, I'm either working on the outline or I'm working directly on my current chapter. Part of that time too, at night, I will actually draw a smaller outline for the specific chapter and then try and go off of that now to expedite the process. I'm trying to finish this book so I can have it ready by the end of October right now. So, and I'm 200 or so pages in. Goal is to get to around 300 pages, 350. So a good 3 to 4 hours I'll spend writing. And when I say writing, like I said, either I'm working on my outline or I'm working on the actual chapter that I'm doing. But I don't try and force it. If I'm just sitting here and I'm just staring at the computer screen, just that 1,000-yard stare, then I'll go do other things and come back to it. But it was easier, like I said, when I had little choice of what to do outside and I just couldn't do anything but sit in here anyway. And it really became easier because I was like, well, you're not going anywhere, so you might as well get something done. But yeah, I think it's good to find a balance. I think it's good not trying to force things when you're having a tough time. I would advise to work around your writing, to find other things to do that are necessarily related to it, and then hopefully something will catch on and then it just hits you. And like in those times when I catch a rhythm, it can be longer than 3 to 4 hours because I don't want. At that point, I'm not trying to turn the faucet off. I mean, because I don't want to stop it. And so we're just going to keep this train going. What's next?
So, as a Marine veteran, how much of your writing has been influenced or inspired by your experiences?
A lot of it. The Ancient Illumination, a lot of the characters are caricatures of people that I have run into in life. The military is there because I was in the Marine Corps. So my experiences in the Marines have colored my writing a lot with as far as the jargon, how they talk to each other, how they relate to each other, how they get mad about the hurry up and wait of the military. They're thinking things want to be done now, but now you made it really a big deal that I need to be here at this point in place in time, and now I'm just sitting here and we haven't done anything yet. But then why was it why did you need me here right now if we were just going to sit here? And that's the frustration that a lot of people in the military go through. So a lot of that comes through in my writing on Ancient Illumination. As far as Yambani, I don't know. Yambani means home in Swahili. So my Yambani chronicles are basically just different stories I wanted to tell in an alternate dimension to that. And that's more made up than anything. I just wanted the Orishas, and so I did some research for that to get the names of some of the Orishas that would be the creators of this universe. And same thing with some of the characters. I just get ideas, and then that idea will pop in my head. And that would be a cool character, and then I go back and flesh that character out in my mind, and then I might write up on the OneNote, I flesh them out, what they look like, where they're from, and then go from there. So my life experiences, I think, have colored a lot of my writing, as I think most people's writers should, because you never know who that's going to touch, who's going to relate to that. I have had other military members that catch some of the names and that were in the Marine Corps at the same time that I was in the Marine Corps and be like, hey, that's a very distinct name. You have a General Krulak as the Commandant in the Marine Corps? It's weird. I served under a General Krulak. Like, well, yeah, that's where I got the name from. That was the Commandant when I was in the Marine, when I was in boot camp. So yeah, I think it colors a lot of what I've written and what I created, taking bits and pieces of myself and just pulling it into the book.
And your stories also include such publicly charged topics from racism to media spending stories to military corruption. Do you hope that when people read your science fiction and fantasy stories that they apply them to our real world?
No, I hope that you get what you get out of it. The funny thing is, it's not as obvious in the Ancient Illumination series, even though it is kind of in your face, but I didn't want it to be about the exact same. The bigotry and the racism is based on mutants that are just so extremely different from regular people now. And that's where it's gone to it. So it's not just your skin color, but it's the fact these people are made of almost like stone-like material because their skin is calcified. So it's the same theme as what's gone on in the real world, and some of the same, even with the touches on kind of slavery, and because they're not being paid what they should be paid for their contributions to society. It's there contextually, but it's not as if the entire time I'm rubbing everybody's nose in it. But thematically, because I believe art is supposed to be a reflection of what's going on in the world, it has to have some. You can't have it just not there at all. It's not going to be a grounded. It's not going to be a relatable. If everything's perfect and we're in just this crazy utopia, that's not going to be something that's going to be relatable to a wide variety of readers. Whereas I think with some of my things, there are things you can pick and choose. You may see, you may read into that someone else reading the same thing may not have caught, and that's also cool as well. That it could be a different experience for different people that read the same material. I had a review on Amazon where somebody didn't understand how the enslaved mutant races had royalty. They didn't for whatever reason. That was the knock for them. They didn't understand that. So I was like, well, I get what you're saying, but at the same time, all of us here, not all of us, but a majority of us are descendants of Africans, and so it would withstand that some of us were related to royalty. So we've been taken from those roots. So not everybody, obviously, but some of the families here obviously would have blood ties to the royal families back on that continent. So what if we all had knowledge of those roots? Wouldn't we keep that standing even if it's just amongst ourselves?
You had the Ancient Illumination series, and then you went back and created your fantasy series. How were you able to tie the past fantasy series with what would become the future sci-fi world?
They're actually not tied. Yambani is a alternate dimension to Ancient Illumination. So they exist but on different planes, so they're not necessarily tied together. So actually they're no relation, even though there is some crossover with a few of the characters that will be going back and forth, I think.
So can you tell us what you're working on next, and tell us what it's about and when you think it'll come out?
Right now, Yambani Chronicles: The Return Home was the first novel, and right now I am working on Yambani Chronicles: The Draconian Tribunal is the tentative title of that one, and that's because 3 of the Elder Dragons have caught a magus, and they're basically having a court case with dragons presiding as judges over what to do with this magus that stirred up so much trouble. And I'm hoping to have that done next month. So Baltimore Comic-Con is October 28th to the 30th. I am hoping to have it available at that convention, but with it, we having to go, have it to go to the editor and then having the formatting done and the cover art done. I'm not sure if it'll fit within that time frame, but at the very latest, I know I'll have it sometime. If it's not ready for that event, I'll have it ready for Ocean City Comic-Con in December. But I actually I'll have it done November then if I don't miss my deadline, October. But this fall it should be as well as the comic books. That's definitely going to be done this coming month. The Genesis of the Chaos Master Yambani Chronicles comic will be done this month, and then we'll be doing the Kickstarter in November to start production on the second issue, and that issue will probably be ready sometime in 2023.
You have answered all of our questions, and thank you so much for that. Do you want to just give a shout out for where people can find you, where they can find your books? Another shout out for your podcast that you do every week. Floor is yours.
Yeah, appreciate it. The Ascari Cast will be broadcasting live on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube tonight at 5 Eastern Standard Time, where we're talking about the last 3 episodes of Sandman. You can find my books on ancientillumination.net. That is my author website. Of course, they're also available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and everywhere else that you get your literary work from. I think the podcast and my website. I think that's about it. Shout out to Jordan Purnell Jackson. He is my graphic artist and illustrator. He's also got his own cyberpunk cyberpunk sci-fi comic series called The Eve of Insurrection and Eve of Reclamation, as well as Andrea Rose Washington. You can check her stuff out too. Alithio, Lindo, and Almond Trees Magic are her books. Appreciate the time.
And again, thank you so much for coming in and sharing your experiences, sharing your knowledge, and definitely promoting the cons. We're in kind of the same geographical area, so I'm going to start looking into some of those places to check out.
How much do you spend money on marketing and not conventions?
I mean, my book's been out for a month right now, so at the time of recording this, so I'm still very, very new into that. So I'm also like Shannon, where I'm very introverted, so I'm going to need to do research and figure out which cons to go to and where I can try and promote.
Figure out which cons to go to and get some art behind you, man. I'm telling you, they will come and talk to you just because of your displays, and that kind of opens the door. Maybe you'll get over some of that shyness.
Nice. Thank you. And thank you so much for our listeners and viewers. Our next episode will be November 1st. We'll have K.R. Ray, author of the award-winning series, The Colors Trilogy. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.